Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Perfect Place to Start. This is a series dedicated to embracing resilience and fostering genuine conversations. I'm your host, Megan Gluth-Bohan. In each episode, I have the privilege of speaking with remarkable guests who have navigated some of life's most challenging experiences and come out the other side by taking the next step forward. In this series, we dive into topics often left unspoken: mental health, the true meaning of success, navigating relationships, and the full spectrum of life's highs and lows. Our mission is to break the silence around these issues, offering a platform for open and honest dialogue that can inspire and empower us all. The inspiration behind this series comes from my own journey. My experiences have taught me that the darkest moments often hold the greatest potential for growth. Join us as we uncover the powerful stories of resilience, celebrate victories, and learn how to navigate life's challenges together. This is the perfect place to start, and every conversation is a step forward. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here today at The Perfect Place to Start. I'm joined by a colleague and a friend, Lucinda Schofer, and I thank you so much for making some time to spend with me today, Lucinda, and have a conversation.
Of course.
I picked you because I have this 30,000-foot overview look at what your life is and what it must be. And I won't say your career. You get to describe that part. But I look and I have this this desire, I think, to understand more about what that's been like and what makes you tick. But most importantly, how someone in a position such as yours can also live what I'm going to call like normal life, like these things that happen to us, these things that come at us. And even though we're in positions of maybe prominence or executive leadership, that life still sort of comes at us. And it's a very human moment, even in the midst of sort of what might appear to the world like something that should isolate us and insulate us from that. So please just tell me who you are, tell us who you are, and a little bit of how you got there, because I always think that's a little bit interesting too.
How I got there to where I am today.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Lucinda Schofer. As you said, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at a trade association here in the D.C. area. My journey was varied in terms of getting to be a COO. I started in college. In college, I thought I wanted to work on the SEC and do like really cool stuff with stock market.
Yeah.
And I took a few economics classes and realized that wasn't probably the path for me. And I discovered speech communications. And I went to the University of Maryland, which I'm very proud of. Go Terps. I had some very good professors that really inspired me to continue to explore communications. And when I graduated from college, it was a recession. My family's outside of Philadelphia area, and I went to school, obviously, in Maryland. They kept trying to pull me back home, and because it was a recession, I knew there were more opportunities here. I had Baltimore, I had DC, I had Northern Virginia, Maryland, Annapolis. So I really felt like I could make a place here and go it on my own, which, of course, my parents didn't love, but they supported me. And I ended up getting a job at a trade association at the time was called Chemical Manufacturers Association. Now they're the American Chemistry Council. Started in their communications department, in their media department. If you can remember, I guess most kids today wouldn't know what this is, but I just sat at a typewriter transcribing interviews. We did video broadcasts. And so that was really cool. I got to learn a lot in that environment, how to be a reporter, how to tell a story, how to find the nugget that people will be interested in. And from there, I had kind of a varied growth in my career. I moved into regulatory affairs and started working with a couple committees, more on the technical side of industry. And we had a bunch of reorgs. There was a time where corporate America was downsizing and reshuffling, and I think that was in the early 2000s. And I ended up in the department that put on conferences and got sponsorships and really promoted the association. And then that got me in touch with some other folks around the association world. And I was asked to interview over at ACD. And I was hired to be their vice president for membership and marketing. And I've been there for 16 years.
So you started in this role. When you started there, did you think you'd be there for 16 years?
No.
Did you think you'd just do this for a minute and go do something else?
So when I left ACC, it was my home.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
It's basically like where I grew up, right?
Right.
In my early professional career. And it was very hard for me to leave. It was really, really hard for me to leave. But I knew I needed to grow. And an advisor, a mentor of mine at the association said, no more than 10 years. You need to keep moving on. And, now I'm there. So it was 16 there, 16 here,
Yeah.
I'm not a jumper. I'm not a, constantly seeking something different. But at ACC and at the Alliance, I have had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. So it's not like it's been the same job all the time.
Right.
So, and I think that's what keeps me there.
Sure. It's that constant acceleration and movement.
Yeah, I'm constantly learning.
So while this is going on, you have this career, and now you're the COO of this place that you were going to be at just for a minute. And that's its own story, I'm sure. That climb there and that desire to do that. But at the same time, you're also a wife and a mom. I'm always curious about this because I think there's a lot of chatter about this and there's a lot of books that are written about this. But at the end of the day, I don't know if any of what gets published is really what it's like for somebody who obviously has a drive to do more with themselves for their career and is also obviously committed to home. Do you feel like you ever found that balance? Or what felt like balance? Or
there is no balance.
Tell me about that.
I think the word balance is it's something people strive for, but it's not necessarily what life is. I mean, sometimes work takes over, and it has to, because there's certain things going on that you have to attend to. Sometimes, life takes over. I remember my middle son was not quite 2. And he got a cold. He got like a virus, and he went from one day, a couple hours, his eye blew up. It looked like, he'd been in a boxing fight. We called the doctor. The doctor said, "Yep, take him to the emergency room." And the next thing you know, they were telling me he was going to Children's Hospital.
Oh my gosh!
And it must have been a Monday, because I know I had to call my boss to tell her, I'm not coming in. He's really sick. And he was in the hospital for a whole week. He ended up having the strep got behind his eye and created this whole infection. And your body doesn't drain from behind the eye, so it can create, lots of problems. But that's an example of where my family needed me, and work was gone.
Right.
I think it was right before the holidays. I had friends who can we go do your holiday shopping for you? And, I had a lot of people that were there to support us. I think that for me, balance is figuring out what is right in front of you, and not thinking too far or not dwelling on things too much. As a mom, you're not going to get everything right.
Yeah.
At work, you're not always going to get everything right. You're going to try, do your best. And as long as you're authentic in that, and I've always made sure that my kids knew that I thought I was a better mom working. I remember one of my kids asked, well, if we could afford anything in the whole world, would you stay home with us? And I said, I love you dearly, with all my heart, but I'm a better mom working and enriching my soul and my mind and being around people who
Yeah.
can, fill in lots of gaps, but always be your mom, always be here for you, that kind of thing. So
you were really just completely transparent with them about, I love working and I love you and I'm a better parent because I do that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your kids are adults now?
Yeah.
We're real close to it. I don't know what age we become adults, but do you feel like, how do you feel like that has like manifested now in your relationship with your kids?
That's a good question. My kids are in their late teens, early 20s, and they're still learning how to be adults.
Yeah.
So there are times where they still probably lean on me more than they should. And of course, I let them. And there are times where I have to push and say, like, you're growing up. This is your responsibility now. And I think that we've always had, because I worked, they had to come home from school and do things for themselves. I did have, aftercare people and stuff around who were amazing individuals, but they, if they needed a snack, they got their snack if they needed. So, even today, if they don't like what's for dinner, I'm like, make yourself something else.
Right. There's a lot of research to suggest, though, that actually makes a stronger adult, having a mom that taught you to have some sort of self-sufficiency.
Yeah. I think we also, my husband and I have been together since college, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. I probably don't seem like that at work, but and maybe Greg would disagree with me. But I think we have a flexible household.
Right.
Everything isn't super rigid. My house isn't perfect. Which, I wish I was better about every night putting things away and cleaning up. But, some nights I'm just too tired. And I let that go a long time ago.
Right.
Right.
You recall, like, can you think of, obviously your son getting sick is a big one. Like, what's your worst moment as a working mom? Like, do you recall? Like, you have to choose between this or this, and you feel like...
I think, I don't know if it's my worst moment. I know my daughter always got upset when we had our board meetings on my birthday.
Yeah.
Like, she wanted me home for my birthday. And I was like, we can celebrate my birthday anytime. But, when you're a kid, the birthday is the day, right?
Right.
And so I think those kind of struggles were hard because you felt like you're letting them down, or you didn't have control. You couldn't, do that. The really tough times, I've always had incredible bosses that were very good to me. So, like, if I needed to stop, I remember I had 3 kids under 5, and it was the year of strep in my house. Like, I don't think there was a week that went by where we didn't have strep. And I remember going to work one day and I said something like, I have to take off again for this doctor's appointment. And one of my colleagues was like, can you just tell us when you will be here? Instead of like, because you're never here. And I was like, yeah, I got 3 kids and it's hard. I also, I had my kids when we were still not in a place in society where we were comfortable with not working 5 days a week, 8 to 5. And when I had my first child, I appealed to my boss and to HR to work longer days and take 1 day off or a half day every week kind of thing. And fortunately for me, they were willing to grant that. And it worked out great because I had, once I was there, I just worked, right? And my husband could pick up the kids and things. And then I had that 1 day where I could do laundry and I could catch up. And it made it in a way where I felt like when I was in each place, I was more present.
Right. Right. So all of this, like, sort of, I always call it the dueling passions, right? Because I think work is a passion for so many of us. And we shouldn't feel guilty about that. Like, that's a key part of what makes us tick. And I like
You're
how
providing
your language,
for your family.
Yeah. And your language earlier about like makes your soul happy. Like there's something about that. And then you have equal to that, this role as a mother and family and a spouse and all of that. And I think if that's all our life ever is, that's enough. Like, that's enough to juggle, and that's enough to endure some days. Like, some days this is definitely like an ultra marathon without a break.
Can be.
Other days it's much better. But I want to pivot a little bit in your story, because a couple years ago you went through a breast cancer journey. And I think that was something that I noticed, where like you had, from the outside, just this moment of sheer grit and strength and grace, right? But I bet that just because it looked like that to me, that's maybe not what the underside of that was. So I wonder if you could just, as much as you are willing to share, I wonder if you could sort of go there with us a little bit. Like, what happened? Like, how did you find out you had cancer? Let's start there.
That was a hard year.
Yeah.
Even before I was diagnosed with cancer. My daughter had been going through a very tough time. For all the moms out there, middle school sucks, especially for girls. And, but we were working through that. And then my mother-in-law got sick. She lived near us. We were very close with my in-laws, and she was diagnosed with lung cancer. So she was going through treatment. We were taking care of her. And 3 months from the day she was diagnosed, she died. Too, in my opinion, too young. And so we were going through all that, and the kids were going off to camp, and there was just the end of school and camp and all that. And I got out of the shower, I was toweling off, and I felt a lump. And I've had things in my life where, I'll get a cyst here or there in my body. But so I was like, oh, it's probably just that. So I made an appointment with my internist, which took, 3 weeks to get in, kind of thing. And again, I was sent for tests, and they had to do a biopsy. And I was laying there when they were doing the biopsy, and I was like, so, if we're gonna, if it's a cyst, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, no, we're checking you for cancer. And I was like, oh. Like, even in my mind, I didn't go there, because cancer doesn't run in my family. I don't have a lot of cousins or ancestors that had cancer. So it was never in my mind. And then 2 days later, I was at lunch with a colleague, and I got the phone call from the radiologist, and she said, you have cancer. And then you're like flooded with,
I want to stop there. I want to stop there. So you get this phone call, you're at lunch with a colleague. This is such a normal moment. This is like the moment that everybody's in, like right now, maybe.
Yeah.
And then everything changes. What was that moment like?
It was funny. I took the phone call outside of the restaurant, and I walked back in. And my good friend was sitting across from me, and I just said, I have cancer. And he was like, let me take you home. I need to take you home. I was like, I can't. I have an executive committee call in half an hour. I have to go. He's like, no, you don't. And I was like, yes, I do.
Did you do it?
Yeah, of course I did.
Yeah. Why?
Because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I don't push things away. I can't say that every doctor's appointment was great. It went from, you probably have stage 1, then we did more tests, and then, well, you might have stage 2, and then after the pathology, I was stage 3. In the beginning, it was, oh, you probably won't have to have more than the surgery, and then, you're likely going to have radiation. And then I had chemo and radiation. So, at one point I was like, is it going to keep getting worse?
Yeah.
Right. And that was hard.
Yeah. Was the news the difficult thing, or was the unknown the difficult thing?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you today, I am extremely fortunate to have gotten breast cancer at this point in our world, where so much research has been done and so many medicines and knowledge is there to, help you through it. As you know, I was very open about the fact that I was going through this. After I told the board, one of the board members sent me an email, and he said, some really nice things about blah, blah, blah. You're going through this. But he said, this is going to be part of your story, not the end. And when you're in that moment where you're going through treatment, you don't believe it.
Yeah.
But I did say to him months later, like, you were so right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think many of us are dealt with things in life that you don't anticipate or you hope you never get. And you have to accept that they're there and that you have to deal with it and you have to get through it. And for me, I mean, not everybody likes to tell others around them what they're going through, and that's okay. That's their choice. But for me, it was helpful for me to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I've helped a few other folks in my life who've had cancer. I know I had a friend who's young friend in her young 30s who got breast cancer, and she was convinced she was going to die. And I would just get on the phone with her and be like, you're not going to die. Yeah. This is going to be hard, but you're not going to die. And she didn't believe it, and she's doing great.
Do you feel like sometimes your role now with this, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about every, for lack of a better, just shitty experience in our life does give us the opportunity to be something for someone else in that. Do you feel like even just that torchbearer of being able to say, you're not going to die, there's a gift in that, right?
Absolutely.
Who was the hardest person or people to tell?
Definitely my mother. Definitely my mother. My kids.
Yeah.
But my kids were like, oh, you're going to beat this, Mom. Like they didn't worry. Even if they worried in the beginning, they were very positive. Which was, I don't know, surprising to me. I thought that they would immediately be, and they were like, oh, people don't die from breast cancer anymore. You'll be fine. Even they were young, this was 5 years ago. I am proud to say that this September will be 5 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Which is pretty cool. It was, that first year was really, really hard. I finished my treatment right as COVID was shutting down the world. And I have to tell you, I have friends who got cancer in that period. They had to go through their surgeries alone in the hospital. They didn't have anyone who could go with them to chemo. I had a different friend or family with me every single chemo treatment I had.
Yeah.
And that support was really incredible. I think when you go through hard times, you're forced to learn gratitude.
Yeah. Say more about that.
As an example, Meg, you sent me a box of stuff that was bigger than my desk probably. Because you were like, I want to do everything I can to help you, and really encouraging words. And there were others on the board, at our office. I mean, my friends. It was overwhelming at first, and I've had other friends who when they're in that situation, they're like, it's too much. I don't want that.
Right.
But for me, it was really, and this may come out the wrong way, but I got to learn my impact on others through my trauma.
Right.
You know, like when I'll compare it to like when my mother-in-law died, and I'm sure many people who've lost important people in their lives have seen this too. There are people that show up for you that you wouldn't have expected. Sometimes people don't show up for you that you would expect, but what I learned going through that loss was not everybody knows what you need, what's the right thing to say. And I think that's the same thing with cancer. You know, people want to ask how you are, but they also don't want to upset you and things like that. But the amount of people that, you know, sent me an email, sent me books or blankets. I mean, we made fun of it at home, but I had like 10 blankets that were sent to me, and I loved it. You know, I had there was a board member whose mother had cancer, and she and her friends were making blankets for people, and they sent me a blanket. Like, it was really cool that people were able to show me that they cared, and that I got to see just like that I've been a part of a lot of people's lives.
Right.
And it mattered.
What's the gift for you? Or many gifts? Like if you look back on this now, are you at a place yet where you can be thankful for the experience?
I think there are parts of me that can. I think, as you said, it's given me the ability to share what I've learned. Watching, you know, helping my daughter through what she went through helped me grow tremendously. I would not have anticipated. I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
At work, at home, I'm going to make it right.
Yep.
You can't always make everything right.
Okay, so pause there, because I'm a fixer too. And a lot of people who are successful are.
Yeah.
What do you do when you can't fix something? How do you live in that space?
It's hard. And I think that it takes a lot of reflection. I mean, when you have surgery, you're forced to just lay there.
Right.
And, you know, you fight through it. I think initially you just fight.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. And then as you come out of it, you have to recover. And you have to give yourself that grace to recover. I mean, there's things that aren't where I want them to be, you know? I don't know, whether it's my weight or other things. I think I've learned to accept that I don't have to fix everything. Right? It's not that I can't, and maybe I can't, but I don't have to.
Do you feel peace in that? Like, does that give you some sense of relief that you didn't have before?
I guess so.
Yeah. What are
There's
some other
less strife in your mind, I guess. You can just kind of rest. Yeah.
Well, because you've already kind of been to one of the worst places.
Yeah.
Like, effectively, you're like, am I going to die? Like, that's the question in any serious illness, right?
Yes. But there are people who have had it worse than me.
Right.
And I always try to remember, like, even when Jory was in the hospital when he was very little, there were kids at Children's Hospital whose parents couldn't afford to be in that room with their kids all day. They had to work.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so fortunate.
Yeah.
You know, there were kids that were so much sicker than my son. And even as worried as I was about my son, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, there's more hardship out there. And so I think that perspective, no matter what you're going through, because not everybody makes it.
That's right.
And so you have to appreciate what you can.
While you're going through cancer, I imagine that you're in that season of life where you're really the student in so many ways, right? Like with this, and I always like to talk about like thanking the teacher, right? But at some point, you become like, you use the experience to become like a teacher for others. If somebody's listening to this podcast right now and is in that place, that starting place where things are falling apart, serious illness, whatever it is, where like the control has been taken from their hands.
Yeah.
What do you tell them? Like, what would you say to them? It can be simple, or it can be philosophical, or it could be whatever. But what would you tell them based on the fact that now you can teach a little bit?
Sure. I think I would start by saying, be open and honest with the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do anything wrong to get here,
especially
from a medical situation. You didn't necessarily deserve this or do anything to get it. It just happens. And so, tell people who you are close to so that they can help you. I would say, make sure you're getting your information from really good sources. Don't Google.
Yeah.
No offense to Google.
Yep.
But, that's not necessarily where you want to get your medical information. And then at some point, you have to make whatever the decision is of what your treatment is, or what, especially with breast cancer, whether you're going to be more aggressive if you don't even have to versus, being forced to. I think it's your choice. It's basically what you need to live with to survive going forward.
Right.
There's a lot of scanxiety when you have cancer. You have to constantly go back for mammograms and MRIs and all kinds of blood tests and other things. And that drives people crazy. So do what you need to do not to have to do all that. But for me, I think it really comes down to, allowing people in, doing your homework, doing your research, ask lots of questions. You find a doctor that you have faith in.
Yeah.
I had very, very, very good doctors. I still do. And then it's not all, every day is not going to be easy. I mean, there were days where I went to work and my boss would be like, you need to go home. You're really tired. And I was like, I told myself I was going to work till 3 today. And he was like, it's 3:00 right now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was like noon. And so that's what I mean. Like, some people have to sometimes force you to take it slower.
Yeah.
But I'm really inspired by other people in the cancer world. And that's the other thing I would say is, if you're facing cancer, there are some really amazing people who have fought through it, or maybe are still fighting through it, but are doing a lot of good in community. So there are organizations that will, if you can't afford to go take time off work and go back and forth to the hospital for your treatments, they will give you, vouchers or whatever to get rides. They will help you with food. They will help you with wigs. They will, there's stuff out there to help anybody if they can't afford it or they don't have those resources. And so I would say there's a tremendous community that exists that I didn't know existed before, which is great. Yeah.
So the title of the podcast is, where you are is the perfect place to start, and we're talking about sort of being in these places where, like, the next step is the next thing you do. And I think it's funny and sort of apropos that board member wrote that this will be a part of your story, but not the end of it, which has indeed been true. So you're coming up on 5 years cancer-free, which
I am.
Feels like just an amazing victory.
It is. But it's not the end of my story.
No. So what's next? Like, what do you want your work to be, your legacy to be? Like, what excites you? Like, because I think, Lucinda, the reason I ask this, and I want you to be really, like, just full-blown candid about this, there's these people who are in the midst of their dark time right now. And maybe can't see that, like, you do get to a place where you get to start to say what excites you. Like, what's the story? Like, this is a part of it. This was a chapter of the book, but what excites you about going forward? Because there is life after hardship.
There is. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think what excites me is the ability to be more present in the things that I do and not constantly be chasing something that is, I don't want to say a pipe dream, but like something that is maybe not attainable or is out there. And, just being able to be a little freer. Like, I don't say, well, maybe I'm not saying this honestly, but I don't say no to as many things as I used to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I do more things for my kids, like to help them with their life. And I make an effort to try and go visit them and be around them. And I think that that's pretty cool. We're going to lots of concerts now and just kind of trying to enjoy. It's helpful that my kids are older.
Right.
So, and I'm at that point in life where I can take time off and I can go do things. So that's pretty exciting. Unfortunately for me, I do have a new diagnosis that may predispose me to additional cancers.
Okay.
And I'm going through the process of figuring that out. And so adding that into the picture is another thing that I have to keep in mind, which is also another thing that's making me say, okay, let's just go and do as much as I can in life. But I still have days where, I just sit and binge watch TV, and I need that, and that's okay too.
I think it's cool that you give like a permissiveness to that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with binge watching a TV on a bad day.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Or sitting on a beach and just reading a book or in a lounge chair. Sometimes you need that.
100%. What piece of advice would you give to anybody listening to this podcast who just feels, moving off of people who have just gotten like a diagnosis, but just anybody who needs to be reminded that this moment is the moment that you have and where you are? What advice would you have to help somebody remember to keep going?
I've known a lot of people in my life who have a tremendous amount of resilience and who have worked really hard to get to where they are. I think that it is really important to believe in yourself, right? To not expect that other people are necessarily going to lift you up. They will, hopefully.
Yeah.
But that you're the one that has to get up every day and you have to decide how you want that day to be. It can be, a great day, or it can be not so great day. I'm definitely a glass half full person. I'm an optimist. And I would rather go through life thinking that things are going to be better. And so that's just how I live. And even in those really, really hard moments, days, I remember one day I had just done a chemo treatment. And it was just one of my kids and me at home. And I had this like shooting pain going up my back. And I didn't know, I figured it was part of the treatment. But when I talked to my doctor later, they were like, why didn't you call? And I was like, well, I just thought this was what I was supposed to happen. They were like, no, yes, you're going through cancer, but we don't want you to suffer. And I was suffering. And I was just like, I thought this was what I was supposed to do. Because I didn't know better.
Right.
And so I think sometimes you don't have to be so tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think as working women, working moms, I have a lot of friends who are working moms and they're tough.
Yeah.
They're tough. They, and they just fight through. So I guess the gift for me is that I learned I don't have to bear it all.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it necessarily go away. It just makes it okay.
You're holding less of it, maybe.
It
If you let
doesn't
someone
weigh as
help
heavy
you.
on you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I remember being in a board meeting where you told us all that you had cancer. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, you described it to all of us as a school year. It was going to be about 9 to 10 months of your life, and you were going to look at it as a school year. And I thought about that. I looked at that and I was like, wow, what a way to give that a container and a place for yourself. And I sensed then, and I know now, that it really kind of was like a school year.
9 months of treatment.
And you learned a lot of crap in that time.
Yeah.
Right? And you did so, again, like I said, from the outside observation is that there was this like just unending, never failing, like just grit and grace and strength and determination. And that was all there. But I'm so glad that you came today and talked about what was underneath that too.
Thanks.
Because I think so often we can think that if you have the fear and if you have the suffering and if you have the dark days, that you don't also have the grit and the grace and the determination. And I think the conversation today like is a demonstration that actually both things can be true at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate it. One final question. What lights you up? Like what's like Lucinda's like just whatever it is. What just lights you up, gives you joy?
That's a hard question. I really enjoy being in community, whether that's with my family, my girlfriends, even work. I like being around people, and it gives me energy, and I think that's why I work. That's why I do what I do. That's why I work in the association world. Like community is just very important to me. So I would say that's been really fun. I mean, I was a Girl Scout troop leader for a long time. And that was, there were tough moments sometimes getting all those little brownies to do things, but but at the end of the day, they were learning and they were having fun at the same time, and I think that's a fun way to go through life. Right?
Absolutely.
Gotta have a sense of humor.
For sure. For sure. Thank you, Lucinda Schofer, for making time to talk to me today and to
You're welcome.
Fill in some of those places that I didn't know about. I deeply respect and admire you, and I'm just so grateful you took time to talk to me today.
Thank you. I hope everyone listening knows that there is a path forward, even in tough times.
I hope they do too. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Thank you.